This is Sky News Live from Westminster as the Prime Minister resigns after the UK votes to leave the European Union. Mr Cameron says the country will have a new leader by October.
I love this country and I feel honoured to have served it. And I will do everything I can in future to help this great country succeed. Thank you very much.
Well, it follows a referendum decided by more than 1 million votes, with Leave winning around 52% of the vote. Well, it sparked huge celebrations for their supporters, with Nigel Farage calling it a win for real people.
June the 23rd needs to become a national bank holiday, and we will call it Independence Day.
Tattoos and catcalls, as you can hear, for Boris Johnson as he emerged from his home, staying silent. And the cost of that vote is already being counted, with the Bank of England's governor promising moves to try to calm the money markets. That came after the value of the pound collapsed to its lowest level against the dollar since 1985. Good morning, this is a Sky News special live from Westminster as after 43 years... After 43 years, the UK has voted to leave the European Union, prompting the Prime Minister David Cameron to announce his intention to resign.
The country has just taken part in a giant democratic exercise, perhaps the biggest in our history. Over 33 million people. Over 33 million people.
Do you have this in a wildebeest? Can I wear sloth and wildebeest together? Just remember, 2X is the gateway shirt.
I'm glad to give to ALS. It's a great cause, but I want to accept this challenge. I want to do it better than it's been done. Been working on this, you know, got this design.
Just remember, 2X is the gateway shirt.
But I do not think it would be right for me to try to be the captain that steers our country to its next destination.
That would mean 3 months of zombie government, and they want him out much quicker. His wife looked tearful. His voice trembled.
I love this country, and I feel honoured to have served it.
Lost its Prime Minister, as well as a central long-standing strategic commitment. The pound plunged, shares too. So all eyes were on the leaders of the official Leave campaign to fill a massive political vacuum.
Bye.
Stocks marched higher ahead of the polls closing in the UK. The country is deciding whether to stay in the European Union. Kevin Mann is president of Hennion and Walsh Asset Management.
I think the market has already priced in that even though it's going to be a very thin victory, Britain's going to stay in the EU, and all that uncertainty surrounding if they leave, when they leave, will there be a domino effect, what will the effect be on the economic recovery will be behind us.
Idea that billionaire hedge fund investor George Soros and what he's doing here, according to regulatory filings, earlier this year, his firm acquired large stakes in both gold and gold miner-related assets, again, in the early part of this year. Now, gold could be an inflation hedge, maybe a safe haven trade, among other things. Soros told the Wall Street Journal there remain concerns not only about China's economy, but also the Greek economy, Europe's migrant crisis, the UK's vote on whether to stay in the European Union, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, billionaire investor Carl Icahn echoed those similar concerns today on CNBC's Squawk Box.
I think he's a very smart guy, George Soros, and I think, listening to what you said, I can't help but think he has a couple of real good points. I think there is, I've been saying it. I think that you have a sort of a false market, buoyed by zero interest rates, and you have to be cognizant of it.
Today, 47.64 is where WTI finished the session, but there still was a little support for this trade, actually. 46.70 was the session low, and that's within the recent range. So we had a 5% drop on the day, but only about a 1% drop on the week. Traders telling me it's a bit like musical chairs here. No one wants to be left without a seat. So they sold as they went into a weekend of uncertainty because of the Brexit vote. Meantime, the dollar was a big part of the crude oil story as well. Brexit, of course, pushing foreign currencies around, sending that dollar higher. That means crude goes lower. Brexit also raising concerns about demand as well, global demand amidst this uncertainty. The demand picture and the positive outlook has been why oil prices have been slowly climbing. Still, seasonal trends here in the United States are giving that support that I mentioned a little earlier to the crude oil trade. Traders telling me today it could have been a lot worse than what we actually saw. Now, moving on to gold, as you would expect, the dollar was thrown out the window here. This was all about the safety trade when it came to gold. Of course, very attractive again after that vote last night. Gold finishing the session at $1322.40. It was a $60 move on the day. And I will say this. I spoke to traders today who said, well, should we buy the dip in crude and sell the strength in gold? People are making the cases for everything at this point. There's just so much uncertainty right out there right now with respect to the markets and how it's going to impact commodities that it's really tough to call.
We are well prepared for this. The Bank of England stands ready to provide more than £250 billion of additional funds through its normal market operations.
As the market continues to absorb the numerous shocks here today, of course, it's the words of George Osborne that will be ringing in the traders' ears here. It was him who said that a vote for Brexit would lead to an emergency budget, to more austerity, and to an inevitable recession. So is that where the UK is headed?
The CBI boss fought tooth and nail for the Remain camp, but now says recession isn't a given.
We must not talk ourselves into this. That, as I say, we've got these deep trading relationships. We will have a period of uncertainty, but business is resilient. It's been through change before. It will go through this again. I feel heartbroken.
Farage, who suggested last night and this morning, and I quote, that free movement of people means free movement of Kalashnikovs. Do you regret that remark?
Well, let's get this right. I said this in December in the European Parliament, a few weeks after the attacks on Paris, that the free movement of people, lovely idea when everything's going swimmingly, but has actually become the means by which weapons, terrorists and criminal gangs can move around Europe completely uninterrupted.
We've got our country back!
Good evening from a shell-shocked Westminster. David Cameron's premiership has ended after Remain lost the referendum he called to resolve his own party's civil war over Europe, which he himself said put at risk the national interest. The immediate economic and political consequences tonight are grave and the future deeply uncertain. But a majority of the country has voted for Britain to go it alone. But at least one of the Tory Brexiteer bidders to replace the Prime Minister has already emerged to a mixed reception.
I believe the British people have spoken up for democracy in Britain and across Europe. And I think we can be very proud of the result.
But in exercising the Europe question, particularly away from London, Cameron's referendum gamble has divided Britain, north from south, young from old, rich from poor, and ignited verbal warfare to render race and immigration the key.
It's all about immigration. It's to stop the Muslims from coming into this country. Simple as that.
They're coming in and probably taking from the NHS what they haven't actually paid into.
My parents, my grandparents fought for England to be free. And it's about time we would come back.
Foreigners, get them out, kick them all out.
Sheffield was a narrow win for Leave, leaving the Remain voters deeply unnerved.
It's shameful. I'm ashamed to be British right now.
Little Englanders.
Are you angry?
I am.
Those who wanted severely restricted immigration could be very disappointed by whoever is our next Prime Minister. 8 hours after their first celebrations, the victors, determined to look sombre, were almost. They said there was no need for haste in negotiations with Brussels. Their victory would bring a brighter future.
So would you like to withdraw your comment when you describe the allegation?
Because I know what you're going to say. I don't withdraw my comment that if you say that Britain is broken,
you said it was piffle.
Then I think I was right.
The Ayrshire coast today, and a parallel universe from Edinburgh's stark new realities. Hail to the would-be chief. Here to reopen Turnberry, his revamped golf resort. Donald Trump, the ultimate beneficiary of the protest vote.
Basically, they took back their country. That's a great thing.
Mr. Trump, a lovely wave to the crowd and us would be great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Of Trump Turnberry, Mr. Ralph Porcini. It's our great pleasure to have you here today, and I would like to introduce you to Mr. Donald J. Trump.
I was given the opportunity. We bought it about 4.5 years ago. The town council has been incredible. The local politicians and all of the politicians all throughout have been absolutely incredible. They approved virtually everything that we asked for. We asked for the right things, but the approval process, because it's so historic, it had to go through many different layers, but every single thing that we wanted, they agreed that they thought it was good, and in some cases great. We've taken the lighthouse, which is a very, very important building in Florida, in Scotland, and we've taken that building and made it something really special.
I have to reiterate a little bit what Eric said and just thank my father for the incredible opportunities and mentorship he's given us throughout the years. Working for him initially and now with him, and now maybe we're doing a lot of it on our own. I just want to thank him for letting us, sprout and grow and give us those opportunities, because he's done such an amazing job in his career. And to be able to learn from the best is truly spectacular. So being able to work in a family business is an interesting thing. You see so many horror stories about that, but to be able to work with him, to be able to work with my brother or sister on a daily basis, I guess we've gotten lucky because we've done it right. It's just incredible. I couldn't be happier every day going into work, and it's a nice way to live your life. So I just want to thank him for allowing us to do that, for being so great to us, for being such a good mentor and teacher, and for always being there. So thank you very much, and I hope we made Turnberry great again.
Thank you, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here.
So, but yeah, I think you understand. Yes, go ahead.
Speaking of campaigning, a lot of people in the States are saying, did you really have to be here for this?
Yeah, because you know why I'm here? Because I support my children. Okay, next.
Meanwhile, the candidate is spending part of the weekend at his new golf resort in Scotland. He was joined Saturday by Rupert Murdoch and his new wife, Jerry Hall. A sort of surreal image for those who remember Hall as the former Mrs. McJagger.
Sir.
And here they are on their way to dinner.
The head of the world's biggest private media empire.
Murdoch likes to own newspapers.
Murdoch controls 175 newspapers, book and internet businesses, and some of the most popular and strident TV networks.
You know what I'm doing? Shut up. You shut up about sex. Just shut up.
But how healthy is it to concentrate such global power in one man?
It is not defensible as a part of any liberal democracy.
His News Corporation is the biggest private media conglomerate the world has ever seen.
We operate in more than 75 countries, 30 languages, 3/4 of the world's population.
So how did he get from there to here?
Standard operating procedure is find a politician who needs help, offer the help, find out what that politician can do for you, and say the help continues if you do it for me.
Murdoch made a Faustian pact with conservative leaders Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. His media outlets backed them, and they smoothed his road to controlling a global media empire. But it was his relationship with British Labour leader Tony Blair that revealed Murdoch in his true politically promiscuous colours.
Very early on, after becoming leader of the Labour Party, Tony Blair flew literally halfway around the world to Australia to speak to Rupert Murdoch and his principal executives.
The British Labour Party regarded Murdoch as the devil incarnate.
In his party, who have told him that there is no spoon long enough to allow him to sup safely with the Murdoch devil.
Murdoch offered Blair a deal, support in making him Prime Minister in return for extraordinary power within the British government.
He was actually more influential in terms of policy with the Prime Minister than most of the members of the Cabinet, and in effect he was the 22nd member of the British Cabinet.
Tonight, the scandal that reached into the heart of the British establishment.
It's about power. Power and the abuse of power.
It's centred on Rupert Murdoch's media empire. Now, one of his editors, Andy Coulson, faces jail for phone hacking. He denied it for years and ended up in David Cameron's Downing Street.
He showed wretched judgment, and it will permanently damage his reputation as British Prime Minister.
David Cameron's friend Rebecca Brooks has been cleared of any involvement in phone hacking and bribing public officials. Rupert Murdoch has always stood by his well-connected protégé.
She was a political animal, without a shadow of a doubt. She was able to collect the right sort of people.
3 senior News of the World journalists had already pleaded guilty to criminally targeting people's private lives. Phone hacking was unleashed on the rich and the famous, but no one was off limits.
Hacking doesn't just happen to celebrities, it happens a lot to real people. Your whole world is completely turned upside down.
Even people under police protection weren't safe.
For that information to get into the hands of journalists is potentially putting people's lives at risk.
For years, the police sat on the evidence that eventually brought down the News of the World. Phone hacking was the scandal covered up by News International for years. Now Panorama reveals how police and politicians let them get away with it.
We were all being told that what we had was a democracy, but in fact, we didn't have anything of the sort.